You've tuned in to the unavailing frequency. But don't touch that dial. We've got you right where we want you.
Welcome to Harrow, the town that isn't supposed to exist. Account number 1, the diorama. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that only exists on Interstate 80 at 3 in the morning. It's a heavy, narcotic fatigue that settles behind your eyes, born from staring at nothing but the hypnotic rhythm of the dotted white lines and the endless black ocean of Nebraska farmland. I was making a solo move from Denver to Omaha in late September. My car was packed to the roof with cardboard boxes, leaving just enough room for me to see out the passenger window and the rearview mirror. The plan had been to power through the night, beat the morning commuter traffic, crash on my new apartment floor by sunrise. Somewhere past North Plate, the monotony broke. My car's dashboard screen flickered. The digital map, which had been reliably charting my straight-line progress for hours, suddenly glitched. The blue line representing my route splintered into a web of jagged digital static. A moment later, the GPS reset, but the little blue triangle represented my car was now floating in a sea of gray. No roads, no topography, just an empty grid. "Come on," I muttered, tapping the screen. The only response was a violent, high-pitched ping from the speakers, followed by a computerized voice. "Recalculating." Ahead, the highway was suddenly reduced to a single lane, choked off by a fleet of flashing orange construction barrels. A crude electronic sign blared, "Night work ahead, expect delays, detour exits 2 miles. I looked at the dashboard clock, 2:14 a.m. The thought of sitting in standstill construction traffic for an hour was unbearable. I figured I could take a county road, run parallel to the interstate a few miles, and hop back on past the work zone. I'd driven in the Midwest enough to know that the roads out here are just a massive grid. You can't really get lost if you keep heading east. That was my first mistake. I took the next exit, tires rumbling over the corrugated rubble strips, and plunged off the interstate. Within 2 miles, the pavement ended abruptly, transitioning into a hard-packed dirt road. Dust plumed behind me in a thick, choking cloud illuminated by the red glow of my taillights. I drove for 20 minutes. The interstate, which I had expected to see glowing in my rearview mirror, had vanished entirely. There was no light pollution on the horizon I could see. The darkness out here was absolute, pressing against the window of my sedan like deep water. The only thing visible were the towering stalks of late-season corn crowding the edge of the dirt road, whipping against my side mirrors. Then, the environment shifted. It wasn't sudden. It was a gradient of wrongness. First, the road changed. The jarring washboard vibration of the dirt smoothed out completely. I looked down out the driver's side window. The dirt transitioned to asphalt. But it wasn't just asphalt, it was perfect. There were no cracks, no loose gravel, no faded sun-bleached stripes. The yellow lines down the center were visibly bright. Perfect. As if the paint had just dried. The road was unnaturally smooth to the point where the hum of my tires just completely disappeared. I rolled down my windows, intending to listen for the distant roar of I-80. Instead, a profound, suffocating silence flooded the cabin. If you've ever been in the country at night, you know it isn't quiet. It's deafening. Crickets, cicadas, wind rushing through the corn, the rustle of unseen animals. But here, the air was dead. There was no wind. The temperature outside matched the temperature inside my car exactly. A perfectly neutral, stagnant 72 degrees. And strangest of all, looking at my windshield, I realized I hadn't hit a single bug since I took the exit. The corn stalks abruptly gave way. The road widened and streetlights began to appear overhead. They weren't the harsh white LEDs of modern cities nor the warm orange sodium lights of older towns. They cast a pale, sickly yellow glow, like the color of an old bruise or aging parchment. A weathered wooden sign on the shoulder of the road. Didn't have a population count. Didn't boast a high school mascot or a mayoral welcoming message. It just read in stark black stenciled letters, "Welcome to Harrow." I slowed the car down to a crawl. The town was a quintessential slice of Americana preserved like a fly in amber. Brick storefronts lined a two-lane main street. I saw a hardware store with pitch-black windows, a small diner with a neon sign that simply said food, and a post office. It looked like an old movie set, or worse, a diorama. Everything was just too clean. The sidewalks were devoid of trash, leaves, or even dust. The brickwork on the buildings were uniform, showing no signs of weathering or age. I checked my phone. No service. The GPS was still just a blue triangle spinning in an endless gray void. I felt a cold knot tightening in my stomach. This primal instinct buried deep down in my brainstem, quietly suggesting I turn around and drive back in the dark, but rationality fought back. I was low on gas, exhausted, hopelessly lost. I just needed to find a map. Up ahead, a 2-pump gas station sat at the corner of an intersection. The lights inside the small convenience store were on, so I pulled into the parking lot. Perfect silence of the town broken only by the crunch of my tires. I parked beside a pump that looked like it was manufactured in the late 1980s. I left the engine running, put the car in park, and stepped out. The silence hit me once again, heavier this time. It felt like pressure in my ears. I slammed my car door. The sound didn't even echo. It was instantly swallowed by the stillness, as if the air itself were padded. I walked toward the glass door of the station. As I reached for the handle, a bell mouthed above the frame chimed ding-dong. A man stepped out from the back room behind the counter. At a glance, he was the picture of a rural night shift worker. He wore faded blue jeans, a red and black flannel shirt, and a blank navy blue baseball cap. But as he walked toward the register, I stopped dead in my tracks, my hand still hovering inches from the door handle. There was just something profoundly wrong with how he moved. When a normal person walks, there's a natural rhythm. Your heel strikes, your knee bends, your weight shifts, your head bobs slightly with impact. But this man's head did not move vertically. I mean at all. He moved forward as if he were suspended on an invisible track, gliding across the linoleum floor. His limbs moved, his legs took steps, but his torso, his head, they remained perfectly, rigidly level. He stopped behind the register and turned to face the door. He didn't look at my car, he didn't look at my face. He stared with an unblinking intensity directly at my throat. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to run, but the logical part of my brain was screaming I was just being paranoid. He's just a guy. Maybe he had a prosthetic. Maybe he was just exhausted. Maybe I was exhausted. I pushed the door open. "Evening," I said, my voice sounding far too loud in the dead air of the store. The man did not react immediately. A full 3-second pause, then his lips parted. "It is the evening," he said. His voice was like dead air over a radio. It had no pitch, no cadence, no emotion. It was a flat, synthesized drone, as if he had memorized the phonetic sounds of the words without understanding what they meant. "Right." I forced a nervous laugh, stepping up to the counter. Up close, his skin. It was terribly smooth. There were no pores, no stubble, no blemishes or wrinkles. It looked like matte plastic. And his eyes, they were brown. They lacked depth. They looked as if they were painted on. "Hey, my GPS died," I continued, desperate to fill the silence. "I got turned around trying to avoid construction back on I-80. Can you point me towards the interstate, or maybe you've got a physical map I can borrow?" Another 3-second pause. His eyes remained locked on my throat. "The interstate is a place for leaving," he replied. "Yeah, Exactly. I'm trying to leave. I took a step back. The smell of the store finally registered. It didn't smell like stale coffee or hot dogs or gasoline. It smelled wrong. Like a smell of ozone, like a metallic tang in the air right after a lightning strike, mixed with the scent of an old dusty attic. The man smiled. The corners of his mouth pulled back horizontally, stretching his tight lips taut over perfectly square, blindingly white teeth. The smile didn't reach the rest of his face. His eyes remained completely dead. "You are in Harrow," he said, the smile holding frozen on his face. "Thanks, I'll figure it out." I mumbled, backing away towards the door. I turned and bolted for my car. I didn't care about gas anymore. I didn't care about the map. I just needed to put as much distance between myself and this plastic man as possible. As I grabbed my car door, a new sound cut through the silence. Swish, swish, swish. I froze, looking across the empty street. The town was no longer empty. I had been in the gas station for maybe 2 minutes. When I walked in, Main Street was deserted. Now there were people, dozens of them. They hadn't made any sound arriving. There were no car engines, no opening doors, no footsteps. Across the street, an older woman was sweeping the sidewalk in front of the hardware store. Swish, swish, swish. But as I squinted through the sickly yellow light, I saw that the bristles on her broom were hovering a full 2 inches above the concrete. She was sweeping nothing, her arms moving in a rigid, repeating loop. Down the block, a man in a business suit was walking a dog, but the leash hung slack, dragging on the ground. There was no dog. The man was just walking, pantomiming the posture of someone holding a heavy leash, his head gliding perfectly level through the air. On the corner, 2 teenage boys were throwing a baseball back and forth, but there was no ball. One would make a violently fast, snapping throwing motion, and a second later the other one would snap his glove shut in the air, and you hear the smack. The sound of the ball hitting the leather echoed, even though there was nothing there. The audio didn't match the visual. It was a terrible delayed pantomime. My breathing grew shallow, my chest felt tight. I was standing in the middle of a hive, and the drones were acting out their approximations of human life. I dropped my keys. They hit the perfect asphalt with a sharp metallic clink. The sweeping stopped. The baseball game stopped. The man walking the invisible dog halted. Every single figure on the street slowly turned their heads toward me. Their bodies remained facing whichever direction they had been walking, but their necks twisted, some pivoting entirely too far until every pair of eyes were locked onto me. Through the glass of the gas station, I saw the attendant had moved out from behind the corner. He was standing pressed against the glass, staring out at me. His mouth was open in a wide, silent O. For a terrifying, agonizing moment, the entire town was perfectly still, bathed in that bruising yellow light. Then, in absolute horrifying unison, every single one of them blinked. I didn't scream. My throat was too tight. I snatched my keys off the ground, threw myself into the driver's seat, and slammed the lock button. I threw the car into reverse. My tires shrieked as I backed out of the lot. None of them ran towards me. None of them lunged. Instead, as I threw the car in drive and slammed my foot onto the accelerator, they all simply took one step forward, a synchronized gliding step off the sidewalk and onto the street. I watched them in my rearview mirror as I tore down the perfect asphalt, pushing my car to 80, then 90 miles an hour. They stood in the middle of the road, a small crowd of rigid silhouettes under the yellow lights. They were watching my taillights fade until the road curved and they were swallowed by the dark. I drove for what felt like an eternity. The silence inside the car was deafening. I didn't dare look back, out the side windows or into the corn. Suddenly, the car slammed into a rut, launching my head into the roof. The perfect asphalt had ended, giving way violently to the washboard dirt road. The moment I hit the dirt, the ambient sound returned, the roar of the wind, the crunch of the gravel, and on my dashboard, the GPS screen burst back to life, the map populating with county roads and a bright blue line directing me toward I-80. I didn't stop until I saw the sunrise hitting the Omaha skyline. I spent the last 3 months trying to prove I didn't lose my mind. I've scoured Google Earth, zooming in on every square mile of Dawson, Lincoln, and Custer counties. I've gone to the public library, dug through physical property maps from the 1950s till now. I even called the state surveyor's office claiming I was looking for an historical marker on a town called Harrow. The surveyor was polite but confused. "Sir," he said, "I've worked in Nebraska zoning for 30 years. There is no town called Harrow, and there never has been." He's right. Harrow isn't on any map. It's a forgotten ghost town or defunct pioneer settlement. It's a stage. It's a diorama sitting in the dark of the American Midwest. And the most terrifying part isn't that they aren't human. It's that they are studying us. They are practicing. And if they ever get it right, we'll never be able to tell them apart.